Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our webinar series today. We hope you are all safe wherever you are. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a moment and speak to you about recent events on behalf of Curve and Eurovet. Globally, we have had our share of challenges these last few months. First, we had to contend with COVID-19 pandemic. People losing their loved ones, their jobs, and their sense of security. I know there have been some of you who have been directly impacted, and our thoughts are with you all. Unfortunately, these past few weeks, our country is now facing another hit. We have been reminded that the most pernicious forms of racism are still alive in the country. And we think it's important to take a moment and address the recent events that are currently affecting the Black community. We at Curve are outraged and saddened by the injustices faced by so many people of color every day. And we see it as our responsibility to speak out against inequality. We must all raise our voices in order to build a stronger and equal future. This conversation might be uncomfortable, but it is necessary. And we want to make sure it continues in the intimate apparel industry, as well as throughout our country. We want to see justice, equality, respect, and love winning over hate, ignorance, intolerance, and racism. Thank you so much for your time. With that, I would like to introduce you Louise Schultz and Cudby, who are our guest speakers today. And I know that Laura Schneider has a few words to say about them. Thank you.
Thank you, Raphael. Hello, everyone. Today's webinar is presented by Cudby and moderated by Louise Schultz. And the topic is directly taken from Cudby's book called Keep Your Customers. In today's economic reality, it's more important than ever to keep the customers you've worked so hard to earn. In this webinar, you'll learn in this webinar, you'll get the 3 keys to unlock customers' retention, whether you sell online or in a brick-and-mortar environment. Cudby wrote a book on customer experience, literally. Her book debuted at #1 on Amazon bestseller list in April. Ali refined her approach to customer experience at her company, Fab Foundations, where she created the FabFit Academy, the leading online bra fit training and certification program for lingerie professionals. Before becoming an entrepreneur, Ali worked at the New York Times Company, Golf Digest Magazine Group, and Animal Planet TV network. These days, Ali teaches entrepreneurship at Purdue University and works with clients worldwide to incorporate her innovative customer retention strategies through her company called Your Iconic Brand. Now, a little bit about Louise. Louise has spent over 2 decades inspired by brand building. As a strategic consultant in 2002, she led the startup of Simone Perel brand in the US market and then ran Simone Perel US operations for 11 years. Louise not only has a love for the lingerie industry, but such a deep appreciation and respect for the entrepreneurial spirit of lingerie boutique owners. Louise was born and raised in Montreal and moved to the US 25 years ago. Today, Louise works with entrepreneurs, business owners, and leaders to collaborate on high-performance organizational coaching and strategic brand development. Last but not least, we are happy to introduce our webinar contest today. So, yeah, I'm just going to wait for the little slide to explain the contest.
There you go.
Thank you. So after the webinar, Ali will ask you a question about the presentation. So you need to be really focused. So in order to win, here are the steps. So after the presentation, Ali will ask you a question. And once you know the question, the rules are: 1, to go on your Instagram account and follow Curve Expo. And 2, answer the question by sending us a direct message on Instagram, adding your answer, your full name, and your full address. And the first 30 people who answer correctly to the question will win the book. Good luck. Thank you.
So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Laura, thank you for the introduction to both of us. Many of you know Ali from her many years of creating very valuable content and coaching for the lingerie industry. If you haven't had the pleasure of knowing Ali, over the course of this presentation, you'll get introduced to her and see how passionate she is about maximizing customer experiences and delivering business principles to drive development. Today's webinar is appropriately named Keep Your Customers. As Laura mentioned, Ali is the author of a #1 selling book, Keep Your Customers. And in this book, she delivers lessons in loyalty that inspire customers to stay longer and become more profitable. Whether Ali's helping boutique owners or working with brands, she's always focused on making sure that her customers are delighting their customers. And really what inspired Ali to write the book about customer loyalty or customer retention really was her years of working in the lingerie industry. And lastly, I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with Ali for over a decade, so I'm the lucky one. So thank you for inviting me to join you on this journey. So we'll start off, Ali, just really what inspired you to initially, from all your years in corporate and all your experience, to write a book that is so nichely focused on the lingerie industry about bra fitting?
So I was inspired by an amazing fit experience. I am one of those people that had a transformational moment in a fitting room in England, and it was so profound. It changed how I felt about my bras, certainly, but also about my body and ultimately my self-image. And I'm sure that this is familiar territory for everybody on this call, but when I had that moment, it was a real wake-up moment for me. And I ended up writing about it, and my writing got picked up by McPete Says newsletter, and ultimately I started writing for lingerie briefs, and then it led to it becoming a book called Busted. And then after I wrote Busted, I created the FabFit Academy, which was the online bra fit training and certification program for lingerie professionals. And then a couple years later, I wrote the second edition of Busted, which I retitled as Fit My Bras. And so that was sort of my journey on the bra fitting side of things. And I've had the amazing opportunity to work with lingerie retailers across the world in their bra fit training and working with them and their teams, which has been great. But over time, what ended up happening was I would have clients come to me who had gone through the FabFit Academy, and they would say, "Oh my gosh, Ali, my clients are crying tears of joy in the fitting room, and I'm just so excited by being able to put the techniques you taught me into practice." And coming from corporate America and the work that I had done in customer loyalty and retention there, I would say, "That's amazing. I'm so excited for you. So now what are you doing to make sure that these customers are going to keep coming back, that, they're not going to wait 3 years to replace their bra again? What's your plan once they leave the store?" And the reality is that most of them didn't have a plan. And so I started shifting gears a little bit, and I went from just writing about bras and bra fitting to writing about the business side of the lingerie industry and helping, working with lingerie retailers and brands and helping them figure out how to engage better retention of their customers, so that those customers would come back and buy more and come back faster and that kind of thing, all that good stuff.
So your original books or your original writings weren't consumer guides; they were retailer books. Your audience was retailers or boutiques.
So the books themselves were written with more of a consumer bent.
Okay.
But the FabFit Academy is for lingerie professionals. It is a professional bra fit training and certification program.
And obviously you took a lot of principles from all your years in corporate America that you imparted into the lingerie industry, which is a lot more intimate. What did you see as a difference, or what drove you or inspired you to continue working with the lingerie industry afterwards?
I love lingerie retailers. I mean, these are some of the most heart-centered, caring, amazing women. I care about the businesses that, and not just women, men too. I care about the businesses that are run in this industry, and I care about the customers that get served. For me personally, it was such a profound moment of change when I had that moment in the fitting room, and I know what it did for me. And so to be able to empower businesses to be able to provide that, not just from the heart side of it, but really also from the process side of it, so that they can develop this loyalty with consistency, that excites me. But I will also say that, I did transition my company from being Fab Foundations to being Your Iconic Brand, because I also have been working with a lot of people outside the lingerie industry as well. And some of that came from my work in the lingerie industry. Like I had one of my clients said, I think you can really help a friend of mine. And then that's sort of how I started my journey working with people outside of lingerie as well.
Excellent. So obviously I know you have many clients, but I know you're a big believer in working with small businesses to make a difference. And if we go to the next slide, and you have this philosophy or this very ingrained that independent retailers have an advantage. Why do you think that?
Because I've seen it. The small independent, or not necessarily small, but the independent retailers have such a better opportunity to get to know their customers and provide a more personalized, tailored experience for their customers. And the big box stores, the department stores, they can't compete with that. And when it comes to customer loyalty, that connection is key. And so when those independent retailers have a plan and have a process that they put into place, they do have an advantage.
So you said two key words, obviously customer experience, and you hear that over and over again, customer experience. What does it mean to you, customer experience?
So a lot of times what I see is that in lingerie, the customer experience is kind of defined as what happens in the business, and especially in brick and mortar stores, in the stores, in the fitting room. And if you think about customer experience as being those moments that are when you're physically with your customer, or in an online business when the customer is shopping with you, then you are only seeing a piece of what that relationship is. And in reality, customer experience is much broader. It is the sum of every point of interaction between you and your customer, and that extends far beyond just those moments when you're actually with your customer, because that's a very, very small subset of those moments. And so once that customer goes home, customer experience can follow them, and business owners and retailers have an opportunity to really lean into that and cultivate something that is very powerful, so that you're not relying on the customer to remember, oh yeah, I did have that great experience in that store.
So true. It's so true. And it's so natural to think, you did a great job in the fitting room, you build a rapport with the customer, and then you give a great customer experience, but you're so right, it doesn't end there. And then you talk about like that, how boutiques rely on just this in-store experience. Is that detrimental? Because if they're doing an amazing job, why isn't that enough?
It isn't enough because, like I said, you only get them for a very short amount of time. And what you want to do is have a process in place so that you are reminding them that they want to come back. you're tapping into how they felt about their great experience with you, but you're also tapping into what they need in their language, in language that is, resonant for them. And so what you really need to do is cultivate these loyal customers, those customers that feel like they have a connection with you. And for that, you can't just rely on those moments when they're in the store.
Often when you're working with your clients, you coach them to develop what you call as a promise to their retailers or to their consumers, excuse me. What is a promise? Like, I promise to give you the best bra. What does that mean, a promise?
So we're going to dig into that in a little bit, but what I will say is that your promise is your the relationship that you cultivate. It's what you stand for as a business, and so we'll go into some more specifics. But what I want to sort of share is that part of delivering on your promise is understanding what is a valuable, what that proposition is with what it is with your customers. So going back to this concept of loyal customers, sometimes I've seen with my clients, they'll say, oh, I did such a great job. Like you were just saying before, somebody came in and they meant to buy a couple of bras and I did such an awesome job wardrobing them. I got them to get bottoms and shapewear and loungewear and they spent, $300 and, I'll say that's great. And so they focus on that one great selling experience. And then they may not pay as much attention to a customer who comes in and spends $100. But if you look at the value of the two customers, the $300 customer may be more memorable. But if that $100 customer comes in, 4 more times and brings a few friends, then the reality is they're a more valuable customer to the business in the long term. And so, how do you make sure that you're capturing that and not getting, not getting distracted or not getting overly excited about that one great sale and having that wider lens. And that's part of the promise.
Right. So clearly building loyalty is a very deliberate process, of course. Yes. And as much as you say the feeling of your customers, it's easy for a boutique owner to also get engaged in the feeling, but they have to stay on their mission of their promise of what they're going to deliver in terms of a long-term customer experience and really be very deliberate in their actions on their loyalty, yes. how they build loyalty.
Right. And I like to say, you don't earn loyal customers by accident. You do need to have a system.
For sure. Well, I've had the pleasure of reading your book cover to cover, every single syllable. And a key principle or key subject in the book, which is really the main theme of this presentation, is really how to unlock the steps to unlock customer loyalty, to discover and to engage and to do very positive actions and activities for a profitable business. So we'll go, can we just dive into step 1 or key 1? Is that good? So the first one to unlocking customer loyalty is knowing your customer. I think you have to go back one. I think you have to go back a slide. Perfect. So I'll let you lead. So key number 1 out of the 3 keys is knowing your customer.
So knowing your customer, exactly. And this sort of goes back to what I was just saying about understanding the difference between somebody who comes in once and spends more versus somebody who comes in more often and spends less, but is actually more valuable in the long term. And I say all customers are not created equal. And let me be really clear. All customers should get an amazing experience in your business. So this isn't about, giving somebody a better greeting or somebody a better fitting. Everybody deserves to have an equally amazing experience when they're in your business with you. But all customers may not or should not be created equal when it comes to the relationship that you build with them, because all customers aren't providing the same value to your business. And so you have to understand who those customers are that are driving your business financially. And so that you can provide that sort of elevated experience to the ones who are in fact the most beneficial for you financially. And so understanding exactly how to do that begins with knowing who your customers are.
So how does a retailer, because that, it's obviously in principle, it's, of course, we have to know who our customers are, especially from a training standpoint, a merchandising, product selection standpoint. But how does a retailer or a fitter, a sales associate know when a customer walks in the door and 100% clear that everybody should get the same experience in terms of representing the store's brand values and promise and obviously high service levels? How does a store know that they should invest more resources, more time, more energy, more focus to this potential customer?
So every store has to come up with a process to do that. Lingerie stores in particular have a real advantage because oftentimes the customer comes in and then they go into the fitting room. And that really, when the customer is in the fitting room and the employee is pulling stock, it gives them an opportunity to just make sure that they know what the history is of this customer's purchases. And you want to do that anyway, because you want to be able to make sure that you're helping them wardrobe effectively. So you want to know what they bought the last time or the time before, so that you can provide a better experience. So this is just an extension of that. And every store comes up with their own way of doing it, but that's really the when you get to do it. It's not when they walk in the door and they come through the gate and they have to present their ID so that you can sort of say, oh, well, what kind of customer are you really? You've come up with something that's organic and elegant so that it enhances the experience.
Got it. Okay, so there's 3 keys which we'll go over to unlock loyalty. The first one is knowing your customer. And then within knowing your customer, you defined loyalty or loyal customers into 3 different segments. Or 3 kinds of loyal customers.
Right. So in most businesses, and this isn't just in lingerie, but if you look across the board, most shoppers are really only average. And in fact, in many businesses, the majority come in, they buy once, and then they never come back again. But there's actually, even within your sort of repeat customers, your loyal customers, there's 3 different kinds, and it's important to understand the difference. So the first kind is the lazy loyals. The second kind is the limited loyals, and the third kind are the lucrative loyals, and we're going to break them all down for you.
Okay, let's go lazy. I'm ready to hear about the lazy loyal.
Let's go lazy. So your lazy loyal is really your convenience consumer. And I have a picture of a coffee truck here because when I worked at the New York Times Company, I would go from the subway to my building, and I would pass 20 different sidewalk carts. I'm sure we've all seen them when we've been at Curve, right? And they all have the same bad coffee and bad bagels. And yet I always went to the same guy, and I was really loyal to him. I mean, I bought coffee from him every week, day in, day out. And then I switched jobs within the company and I moved to another building, and I literally never went back to him again and never really thought about him again. My loyalty was there as long as it was convenient for me. But as soon as it wasn't, I was out of there. And there was really nothing that he did that attracted me. And there wasn't really much he could do to keep me once I left. My loyalty was just lazy. And everybody's going to have some of those customers and convenience. And you don't want to get too distracted by them because you can't really move the needle for them.
Okay. So when to translate it to a lingerie store, the lingerie store is not going anywhere, obviously. And so when they lose their customers because it's no longer convenient for them, so they should just focus on the next segment of loyalists. They should redirect their efforts. So you shouldn't try to say, oh, we'll ship to you since you moved away, or.
So you can offer, but a lazy loyal isn't going to care. So it's not about, you should absolutely make that offer, but if their level of loyalty to you is only lazy, then they're not going to be interested in extending the relationship. And if you make that offer and they take you up on it, then they weren't a lazy loyal. Then you've already elevated them into the next layer. So you can somebody can walk into your store as a matter of convenience and be a lazy loyal. And then you give them such a great experience that they just become more loyal, and then they elevate into the next level. So it's not like if somebody starts one place, they have to stay there forever.
Okay, great. So you've elevated them to what you call the limited loyal.
So maybe you've elevated them to a limited loyal. And so a limited loyal, they need to be convinced. And so they don't really feel that deep emotional connection to your business, but maybe they come consistently for your sales, or, maybe they come when they'll price check you in the fitting room. So, it's not like, oh my gosh, whatever you do, we love you. It is the, all right, well, you're my first stop, but you're not my only stop. And you have to sort of convince me to keep coming back.
Okay. And then how would you, or can you give an example how you can convince a limited loyal to graduate? And we've already graduated them from being lazy. How do you graduate them to being your ultimate loyalist?
So the ultimate loyalist is your lucrative loyal. And these are the people that they feel an emotional connection to you. And they want what it is that you have to provide. And, maybe it's because you have consistently helped them out in ways that those big stores aren't going to. Maybe it's because you continue the relationship outside the store. And so, and they see, oh, this business owner, this business is providing value to me that is beyond just a bra, because we all know that we do more than sell a bra. We sell self-confidence, we sell body positivity. And so how you convey that is really important, because when you can get a customer to tap into that sense of body positivity, that sense of being their best self when they're in your business, they're going to want to come back. But again, you can't just rely on them to remember. You have to have a process to tap into that on and over again. So, the lucrative loyals are the ones who they get it, they buy in, they want it. And they're going to not only buy more, but they're also going to engage more. So you're going to know them because they're going to want to show up to your events. They're going to want to bring their friends. They are going to, be more active with you on social media. So those are some of the keys that you're starting to elevate somebody from being limited to being a more lucrative loyal.
Got it. So you know your customers, you understand the value, or just for business terms, segmentation of their loyalty level. So you work to obviously graduate them to your ultimate lucrative, and that's great. And then how do you how do you view the value of losing a customer? So you talked a lot about loyalty, but what about the value of not having the customer?
It's really expensive when you lose a customer. And right now, because of everything that's been going on, it's going to be harder than ever to get new customers. And so maintaining that customer retention is just so important. And so, there's actually, I have an example that I go through a lot, and it's on my website, but the short version of it is that I had a client who would have a customer come in and they'd buy a $50 bra, then they'd never come back again. And my client was like, no big deal. It was just $50. And we started to dig into it. And actually a customer who if they had kept that customer, if they hadn't lost them after the first sale, then they might've come back, 2 times a year for 5 years. That was sort of an average, like for the people that did come back for that business, like that was sort of their average. And so they didn't just lose $50, they lost $500. And then if they had in fact converted them into being a lucrative loyal, then they would have spent even more and they would have referred more people. And what they realized was that every time that, $50 customer walked out the door, that customer that they had interpreted as being a $50 customer walked out the door, they were actually losing thousands of dollars. The hardest and most expensive part is getting the customer to buy the first time. And so it makes so much sense to, really focus on retention so that you can grow the business more effectively.
Got it. Which obviously brings you to your next point of how lucrative loyals generate the most long-term value. And I think that's actually, value is important in business, but I think that, just with everything that's going on, and also just relationship building, which is, you said, advantages of working with small businesses is just that long-term relationship. It's so powerful. It really is.
Well, and a lot of it, when I say know your customers, I really do mean know them. So, the more that you can focus in, the reason that it's so valuable to know who these lucrative loyals are is so that you can speak their language and you can communicate with them in a way that is, high impact for them. And so it's interesting because I'm on a lot of lingerie stores mailing lists, email distribution lists. And so I've been seeing a lot of these messages, and there's a big difference. And one of the things I've seen a number of times is there are retailers and they're sending out emails and they're saying like, we know that you want to save money, and so we're offering you in these times of coronavirus, we're offering you 20% off. And 20% off is not necessarily a message that is high impact for customers. It's actually kind of a very business focused message. It's that like, we want to sell you stuff, and so we're going to offer you a discount. And it almost comes across sometimes in some of the emails that I've seen as like almost like nervous. And by the way, retailers, I get it. You probably are nervous. I mean, it is a nerve-wracking time, not just in the lingerie industry, but across the board. And so there's that feeling of like, what can I do to urge a sale? But when you know your lucrative loyals, you will know what it is, what messages are going to be most inspiring for them. And you can reframe those emails and tap into those customer facing messages. So rather than it being kind of about you, you want to think about how can you make it truly about the customers, about them.
Right. And just to reinforce, it's very natural. It's very common practice for a brand, a retailer, for businesses to say, "Ooh, I want to reward loyalty, and so I'm going to give monetary value." But you're so right; it's not the most effective way to communicate. And really, it's about engaging in their feelings, is what you said at the beginning.
Right. So for example, one of my clients, they really focused on going to their customers and saying like, "Hey, we know you're at home and you are probably spending all of your time in like PJs and loungewear. So, and we also know," this is not their marketing language, but I'm paraphrasing, "we also know that you want to stay just as connected to being your best self at home as you do all the time. And so how can we help you refresh the loungewear in your rotation so that you're not looking at the same sweats every day?"
Right.
And they really, they really made it fun. And some of their language around the same sweats was really funny. And, but it really allowed the people at home to feel like, oh yeah, I do want to tap into my best self. I haven't changed as a person just because I'm not going to the office. And it was very powerful.
And in your book, you say you can still offer the 20% off reward or, just to stimulate the activity, the action, but it's not what you're leading with. You're leading with the connection, the feeling, and then obviously it's like a sub thought, the 20% off.
Right. And this is one of those times, and maybe you don't even have to offer the 20% off if you are tapping into that feeling correctly. But then if you want to, then that is a place where you can reward loyalty, and you can, do something extra, do a little upgrade, do something special for the people that have been loyal to you. But really it's what do you lead with, and how are you tapping into how they're feeling in a way that helps remind them like, oh yeah, I want to get this now. Like this is important for me. It's not just about buying stuff.
So key number 1 to unlocking loyalty is to know your customers and know how to communicate to them and engage with them, connect with them on a feeling level to create the value. And what would key number 2 be in unlocking customer loyalty?
So key number 2 is what I call aim for the bullseye. And we've alluded to this a little bit with talking about feelings and promise, but let's really dig into what we mean here, because 70 to 95%, and this is not my research, this is research that comes from companies like McKinsey and Company, the customers buy based on feeling, not logic. And we think that like, oh, we're buying this because it makes sense. We're buying this because like I've run the numbers or whatever. But the reality is, across the board, we as humans, we buy based on feeling, not logic.
So key number 2 is aim for the bullseye. And this is your terminology, which I understand because I read the full book. Just in one word, how would you define bullseye? Like, what does a retailer to do to aim for the bullseye?
So the bullseye, and I think we're talking about this more in a second, but a bullseye is basically, if a mission statement is what you have to say about your company, it's who you are. Your bullseye is how you engage with your customers. It's your customer facing mission. And so the reason that I call it the bullseye is that everything you do and everything you say wants to tap into that positioning state, that position, that perfect bullseye. You want to aim for the target. You want to hit the bullseye in that feeling state, so that people are constantly going back to like, oh yeah, I felt so amazing when I was in that store. That reminds them of the emotional connection that they had. It reminds them of the endorphins that they felt when they bought from you, because you're tapping into that emotion. And now we know that people buy based on this emotion. It's not a logic play. It's an emotion play. It reminds me of that great Maya Angelou quote. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
100%.
And we know that. I mean, everybody, they see this quote and they're like, oh yeah. But then as soon as it comes time to do, marketing or business stuff, then it's like, oh no, we got to go with, a logical argument for, what this is going to be. And the reality is, you want to tap into that feeling.
Got it. So the bullseye is the boutique or the retailer's mission of the way they want to basically build their own DNA, and the mission statement that they want, or we could say customer experience that they want to deliver to on behalf of their boutique. And so when we aim for the bullseye with the communication, how should they think about this?
So your bullseye is really a customer-oriented mission. And so one of the ways that you use the bullseye is in your communication. And so once you have that bullseye articulated for your business, you want to tap into it and make an emotional touch point with it in all of your marketing communication. And so let me give an example, because I think that that's going to be easier, but this is the kind of thing that can inspire lazy and limited loyals to upgrade their level of loyalty with you, because they get into that, you get into that feeling place, and then they're like, oh, I want more. And it definitely taps into your lucrative loyals, because they're lucrative to begin with because you make them feel amazing. And so for example, Esprit de la Femme is a boutique in Nelson in British Columbia in Canada, which is a tiny, tiny little town. It's only like 10,000 people. And the owner, Cheryl Cote, has been doing an amazing job with her social media. And she has been creating, and that's actually Cheryl in the pictures, and she's been talking about the products in her store and making them very relevant to her customers. And so she'll talk about the modal of the fabric of that chemise, but she doesn't talk about it in terms of it being a technical fabric. She talks about how it feels so amazing on her skin and how it reminds her of, date nights and that kind of thing. And so she is making it very, very human and relatable. And she's also inviting her customers into this better version of themselves by saying, like, I'm still wearing this stuff, and I'm still, I'm in my backyard, but I'm still having a life where I am living my best life. I'm the best version of myself, right?
So so it sounds like not only is she connecting to her customers, obviously in a very powerful and very effective way, she has she lives in a town with a population base of 10,000. Is that, remember you telling me? And so she's not using her resources, which is her time and her creative energy, to source acquisition or new customers. She's focusing on her existing customer base, going deep to the loyalty level, and obviously achieving to graduate her customers to lucrative.
Right. And she's also been doing a great job. And I know this has been highlighted in a number of earlier webinars on the Curve webinars, but, she's been picking up the phone. She's been, reminding customers of how they feel when they have the experience in Esprit de la Femme. And then that inspires them to buy again, even when, so it's a tiny town, but it's a tourist town. So she has customers that are not physically close to her. And she's been doing a lot of shipping because of that. And it's because she has done such a great job of creating that bullseye and bringing customers back to that, reinforcing, that was what I was looking for, that emotional connection that people feel when they're in the store with her.
So clearly when you build a bullseye, it's obviously it's the owner's vision, clearly, and some collaboration with the client base and your team. But how do you get your team engaged into your message? Like how do you make sure that it really is part of your brand DNA and the whole full customer experience?
So that's a great point, because you can't just have these things reside in your own head. You have to share them with your team and do it over and over again, and make sure that emotional touch point is being embraced by everybody. So I'll share another case study, but I think we need to move relatively quickly. But there's another lingerie retailer, and they created this bullseye, and part of their bullseye was that they created these potpourri sachets that they gave to their customers the first time they bought. And it became something that the owner did a really smart job of engaging everyone on her team to be a part of. And so they even got to vote on which flavor profile they liked best, and they picked this flavor profile, the scent profile that was sort of sweet and spicy, and that tapped into the bullseye of the store. And so it had all these different layers. And because the employees were part of the inspiration behind what they chose and how they did it, they felt more bought in. And so then they also then knew why they were giving the sachet. And so, what the owner realized was that so many times in the past, when she had wanted her employees to do something, she would say it, and then she would expect them to just understand it. And she didn't reinforce it often enough. She didn't make it clear enough. And so by having this bullseye and making that be something that she was so clear about saying over and over again, but also tying it into this action that they took and then including them in it, that they really felt like they were a part of it. And then that reinforced the employees actually participating and being excited about it. And then their excitement spilled into the into the customers, and it created this really great virtuous cycle.
So to run a boutique, obviously, it's when you're the owner and the leader of the boutique, it's a tremendous amount of work. So even though you tell your team, okay, great, put the potpourri sash in every first customer, go. Don't assume that that's enough. Don't assume that your team understands. Don't assume that one time is clear, and just it's really important to reinforce the message. Obviously, that's probably an easy one. Put a potpourri bag in a thing, but it's really ensuring that your team is clear throughout, like you said, every touch point of customer engagement.
Yeah, but it's not actually as easy as that, right? Because you don't just want to throw it in the bag. You want them to present it. You want them to invite the customer into that experience and share why it was meaningful. And in fact, for this company, for this business, they did such a great job that the customers would go home and they'd take pictures of the sachets in their underwear drawer, and they would put them on social media. And I don't think that the owner expected that. And so they were actually getting additional benefit from creating these sachets. And if they had just thrown them in the bag and be like, here, have a thing, then of course those customers wouldn't have been inspired to put it on social media. But because the owner shared it in a really tangible way with her team, and then the team shared it in that similarly tangible way with the customers felt bought in. And that's what created all of that buzz.
Very powerful. I meant placed elegantly, but yes.
Well, of course, everything you do is going to be placed elegantly, Louise.
Of course. Okay, wonderful. And so obviously execution, so a boutique owner should never assume that it's clear and that what's in their head in terms of bullseye, brand mission, customer experience expectation is obvious. Make sure it's very clear so it can be successfully executed.
Right, exactly. And the one last thing I'll say before we move on to the third key to unlock loyalty is that if there's one thing that I see over and over again, more consistently than anything else, is that the number of times that an owner feels, or a manager feels like they should have to say something in order to make it stick, and the number of times it actually takes to make something stick with employees is very, very different. So you're probably going to have to remind and reinforce way more times than you think you should have to. But that's of course because, when you're in a leadership role, you're more invested in that company. You're thinking about the growth more. You just have a different orientation to it. So just be prepared.
Clear, very clear. Okay, so our third and final key is to unlocking customer loyalty.
Is to take consistent action. And so we talked about this a little bit just now, and the consistent actions that the boutique owner took to make sure that the story of the sachets was shared, and the reasoning behind it, and all of those things, and what exactly the owner expected her employees to do in order to present the feeling state, in order to understand who those customers were, and even to understand if they were new customers. Like, all of those were steps that had to be broken down into a easily repeatable, consistent process for the employees, so that they could follow it easily and be successful.
In your book, Ali, you highlight, and you never underestimate the value of trust, of building trust. And so, we assume, of course, a customer should trust us, that we're putting them in the right size. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, about how powerful that is?
Sure. So I'll actually use an example from my own business when I started the FabFit Academy. So when I started it, one of the things that I do is I go through all of the different styles of bras, and that's part of helping helping everybody understand what's a demi versus a balconette, for example. And what happened was, when the boutiques would have all of their team go through the program, they were actually realizing that everybody was speaking the same language. And so there was no more of that, like, well, what's a t-shirt bra versus a contour cup versus a molded cup? And everybody had that same vocabulary. And that meant it provided a much more consistent experience for the customers. And that created trust. There wasn't confusion. And that is actually something that I didn't anticipate when I created the FabFit Academy, but it was one of those things that people said back to me a number of times. And then also, because the training is based on videos and everybody watches the same videos, everybody in the store would have those same touch points, those same stories that they could go back to. It's like, oh yeah, do you remember when Monique was wearing that purple bra and she said such and such, or it looked like such and such? And those shared experiences created more consistency in the business and actually created more trust with customers. And that was something that was a great benefit for the people, and it created more loyal customers for the businesses. And another thing that was great about it was that it set clear expectations of employees. It's like, right, okay, you're going to go through this process. It's, it requires X, Y, and Z, and everybody goes through it, and this is part of what we do. Right. And it was actually even helpful for the owners also because they knew that the employees were all getting the same training. Right. And so that's just one of the many ways that you can cultivate trust.
Right. Trust, and obviously building the confidence of the sales associates and the confidence that of the retail owners that they know that their sales associates are representing their bullseye, representing their brand to the best with obviously the proper training. Right. And then lastly, obviously with your book launch, obviously congratulations, by the way, on your book to become #1 so quickly. Both Raphael and I read your book and we really appreciated, there's some really very thought-provoking principles on customer retention and obviously brand building experiences. How did you launch your book and how did you put your own principles to use as, you build your brand?
Yeah. So the point here is not to toot my horn, but really to say that when I launched the book, I did a very, very conscious campaign to launch it. And I followed my own steps in the book. And I, reached out to people that I had relationships with, and I cultivated the network, and I knew exactly what would be helpful for them in terms of, what I could ask and how to do it in a way that would inspire action. And so, there are certain ways of dealing with a book launch that I wanted, and I wanted people to engage with the launch in a particular way. And so by following the principles in the book, I actually was able to guide my customers to buy on a specific day, which is the way that bestseller lists get generated. And so, and then I was fortunate enough to have cultivated relationships with people that they wanted to. So that was great too. And so by following the principles in the book, I was able to hit the #1 spot on the bestseller list, which was great. And, look, I'm a small business too. And so, this is really, as I said, we have an advantage. I know my customers really well. I know the people that I engage with enough to be able to have that more personal relationship and had this really very, very exciting outcome.
Well, you definitely succeeded in graduating me from a lazy loyal. I can tell you that. It was
Thank you.
And lastly, and I know your book obviously is about retention, but we can't end the presentation without talking very quickly about acquisition, because it's very normal. Just like we talked about the case study of the Canadian customer who only had a population base of 10,000 customers. Her natural wasn't to go acquisition. So what do you recommend why is retention so valuable, and why put your efforts towards retention versus gaining new customers to grow your business?
So all of the research shows it is much harder and much more expensive to get a new customer than it is to keep the customers that you already have. And this is especially true when the economy is not as healthy, which unfortunately is true for all of us right now. And so this is the time to focus in on retention. And I care about you guys. I care about lingerie boutiques. I care about the job that you all do on behalf of the women that you serve, and want everybody to come through this difficult time as healthy as possible. And so, just to think about, when we think about growth, we often think about, okay, how can I get new customers? But this is such a great opportunity to say, okay, how can I engage with the customers that I have? How can I reach out to them and cultivate that relationship? How can I unlock loyalty?
Got it. So you're saying that business priorities right now should be, besides, of course, engaging your team and making sure they're on your same vision, is to focus on retention. And if we could just revisit the 3 keys to unlocking loyalty.
Sure. So the first one was, again, know your customers and be able to define your lucrative loyals so that you can speak their language and communicate in a way that taps into their best selves and the reasons that they are a part of your company. And then 2, aim for the bullseye. So what is that emotional connection that you can create and that will speak to your lucrative loyals and infuse everything that you do with your marketing and with your team and having that sort of customer focused mission, which is your bullseye. And then finally, take consistent action. So what are the steps that people need to take in order to motivate both employees and customers to do what it is that you want them to do and feel amazing about doing it? And so the combination of those three is really how you unlock loyalty.
Very powerful. Thank you. So we're going to go to question and answers, and then we're going to ask the contest questions so that they can win your book. But before we do that, and I know this is just obviously a highlight at, in terms of business priorities, but Ali, if anybody wanted to work with you directly within a group or one-on-one, I noticed that you put your contact information there. Can retailers reach out to you? And
please do. And I feel loyal to you all too, and take that into consideration with what I do and all that. But I really want to focus this time on the retailers and making sure that their questions get answered. Thank you, Louise. I appreciate that. But let's focus the time on them, but feel free to reach out to me. I think that we want to do the contest question first, and then we can go into Q&A.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
So,
all right. So who's going to read the question?
I will, because I'm the moderator.
Awesome.
There are 3 kind of loyal customers, which you went quite in depth. Which kind drives the most valuable for your lingerie business? A, limited, B, lucrative, or C, lazy? And Laura guided you before on how to submit your answers to Curve. And then I guess Laura will follow up in terms of advising who receives Ali's book and who answered the questions correctly.
Yeah, so I can repeat one more time the rules on how to win the book. So you have to first go on our Instagram and like our page at Curve Expo. And second step is to send us a direct message on Instagram answering the question and adding your full name and full address. And one more time, it's the first 30 people who answered correctly who will win the book. Okay. Thank you. And so about the question, there's one question that have been asked, and it is, could you touch on how brands can achieve this special relationship with our customers, boutique as our wholesale partners?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the last part.
So could you touch on how brands can achieve this special relationship with our customers? And then in parentheses, it says boutiques as our wholesale partners.
So this is from a wholesaler asking about relationships with boutiques, I think, perhaps. So ultimately, it doesn't matter if your customer is the person that you cultivate the relationship with. And so whether you're a boutique cultivating relationships with consumers or a wholesaler cultivating a relationship with a boutique, the steps are the same. And so it's all about understanding what motivates a buyer to buy. What motivates the boutique to choose you? What motivates the consumer to choose to buy from your store? And so, and every business, every buyer every purchaser, I'll just say it that way, has a different set of motivations. And so it's really up to you to understand them. And so, if you're a wholesaler and you want to inspire a boutique to buy more from you, it's up to you to understand what's going on in their worlds and how do you speak their language and how do you invite them into a situation where they want to be your customer. And that's going to go beyond, even product and pricing and into cultivating the relationship so that they feel like they're valued by you. The one of the things we didn't really tap into is when we talk about that feeling state, it's really how can you make people feel seen, heard, and valued? And this is the thing that inspires me most in my business is so often we go through our lives and we don't feel valued by the companies that we buy from. And so when you create that, it is huge. It's what transformed me in the fitting room. It wasn't just because of the bra. It was because, you know, I felt really like I felt seen so profoundly when I was shown this product that I had never seen before and sizes I had never seen before. It was, you know, it really did go to the core of my own self-image. And, you know, that's what was so transformative in that moment. And you don't have to have that transformational moment in the fitting room in order to tap into that.
Thanks a lot, Allie. So unfortunately, we don't have time for any other question, but what we're gonna do is send Allie the questions, and then we can answer to each and every question that we haven't had the time to answer.
Please,
And
I'm happy to talk to you guys. Like, feel free to email me, reach out. Happy to continue the conversation.
absolutely. Thank you so much, ladies. And on behalf of the Curve team and Raphael in particular, thank you so much for being faithful partners and help retailers to unlock loyalty. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And thanks for all the attendees to be here with us today. And we will see you next week for our next webinar. And I don't know if I gave you a slide, one more, the last one. Sorry. Yeah, so for the upcoming webinars, next week on Wednesday, we will have a webinar, a conversation with brand leaders, Kosabella and Dora Larson. And on the 17th, another intimate chat with specialty stores. We are going to continue the conversation. Thank you so much, and we wish you all a happy Hum Day. Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Be well.
Bye,
Be safe.
everybody.